You're a nobody. You've always been a nobody. And wasting what little potential God gave you on some silly little internet hobby doesn't change that. Go ahead and leave. Don't bother coming back until you have something real to show for yourself. That's what my mother said to me, standing in the kitchen doorway in her pale yellow robe, arms folded, voice flat like she was reading from a grocery list. No trembling. No hesitation. My father sat at the table behind her, not even looking up from his coffee. And my brother leaned against the counter, smirking into his phone like the whole thing was mildly entertaining. My name is Vivian. And if you've ever been made to feel small by the very people who are supposed to make you feel safe, I need you to stay with me for the next few minutes. Because what happened after that kitchen moment after I walked out that front door with a duffel bag and exactly $2,000 in my checking account is something I need to tell you slowly, so you don't miss a single part. It was 3 years ago. I was 28. I had been building an online skincare brand for almost 4 years at that point, mostly working from the spare bedroom of my parents' house in a suburb outside Columbus, Ohio. I kept it quiet, not because I was ashamed, but because I had learned early that sharing dreams with the wrong people is the fastest way to kill them. My mother was a retired school administrator. My father had spent 30 years in insurance. My brother Marcus was an orthodontist with a mortgage and a minivan and a lot of opinions about what counted as a real career. They didn't know that my brand, a clean skincare line I had built from scratch using contract manufacturers, a Shopify store, and an obsessive understanding of TikTok content, had crossed $2 million in revenue the previous year. They didn't know because I hadn't told them. I had a separate P.O. box, a separate business bank account, a separate LLC registered in a state that wasn't Ohio. I had learned to build quietly because every time I had tried to share something with my family, even something small, it was met with a sigh, a dismissal, or worse. One of my brother's lectures about why I should have gone to pharmacy school like he'd suggested. But that Sunday, I had made the mistake of telling my mother I was skipping Thanksgiving with her sister's family in Cincinnati because I had a supplier meeting in Los Angeles the following Monday and needed to prepare. That was all I said. One sentence. What followed was 40 minutes of accumulated resentment dressed up as concern. The internet thing wasn't sustainable. I was almost 30 with no savings, no benefits, no retirement plan. I was embarrassing the family at every holiday because I couldn't answer basic questions about my life without being vague. My cousin had just gotten into medical school. My brother Marcus had bought a second investment property. And I was, in my mother's exact words, sitting in that room playing on a computer like a teenager with no future. Then came the line about being a nobody, and the invitation to leave. So I did. I zipped my duffel bag, tucked my laptop under my arm, walked past my father, who still hadn't looked up, and stepped outside into the cold November air. I didn't cry until I was in my car. Not from shame. From exhaustion. The kind that settles in when you realize you have been quietly fighting for your own dignity inside the same four walls for years, and the people inside still cannot see you. I drove to a hotel 14 minutes away, checked in for a week, ordered Thai food, and the next morning I flew to Los Angeles. The supplier meeting went well. Very well. By the end of that week, I had signed a contract for a new product line, confirmed a partnership with a mid-tier celebrity who had 11 million followers and was genuinely obsessed with one of my serums, and received a preliminary term sheet from a consumer goods investment firm that had been quietly following my brand's growth for 8 months. They were proposing a minority stake. The valuation they put on my company was $19 million. I remember sitting in my hotel room in Culver City reading that number on the screen, and I thought about my mother's voice. Silly little internet hobby. I did not call home. Over the next 14 months, I moved to Nashville, signed a lease on a 2-bedroom apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the river, hired a team of 6 full-time employees, and closed the investment round. I brought in a director of operations, a head of content, 2 customer experience managers, and a logistics coordinator who had previously run fulfillment for a brand doing 8 figures. We expanded to retail. A regional beauty chain picked us up first, then a national one. By the time the following fall arrived, my brand had crossed $11 million in annual revenue, and we were projecting $18 million for the year after that. The investment firm sent a bottle of champagne. I was happy. Not the kind of happy that needs an audience. The quiet kind. The kind where you sit on your couch at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night eating cereal and looking at your sales dashboard and feeling something so solid inside your chest that no one can touch it. I had told no one in my family any of this. My mother's number was still in my phone, filed under Mom, but I had not called it. She had not called mine either. For 14 months, the silence was mutual. Then my father had a health scare. A minor cardiac event, nothing requiring surgery, but enough to land him in the hospital for 3 days. My brother Marcus texted me. Not to apologize for anything. Not to acknowledge the last conversation that had taken place in that kitchen. Just this: Dad's in the hospital. You should probably know. I sent flowers. I did not go. 2 weeks later, my mother called. I let it go to voicemail. She left one. Her voice was different, smaller. She said she just wanted to hear my voice. She said your father is home and doing better. She said she hoped I was well. She said call me when you can. There was a pause before she hung up, the kind that lives in the space between what someone means to say and what they can't bring themselves to. I did not call back, not because I was trying to punish her, but because I had spent 28 years calling back and showing up and smoothing things over and pretending that the way my family spoke to me was just their way, just how they showed love, just something I needed to be less sensitive about. I had decided that I was done translating cruelty into love just to keep peace in rooms I didn't even want to be in. 3 weeks after that first voicemail, my brother Marcus called. I picked up. I don't know exactly why. Maybe I was curious. Maybe I was just tired of ignoring the blinking light of something unfinished. He asked how I was. I said fine. He asked where I was living. I said Nashville. There was a beat. Then he said, look, Mom is not doing great. Not health-wise, just emotionally. She feels terrible about what happened before you left. Dad does too. He just doesn't know how to say it. I think it would mean a lot if you reached out. I was quiet for a moment. Then I said, Marcus, do you remember what she said to me? He exhaled. Vivian. She was frustrated. I asked him to say it back to me. What she actually said. Word for word. He didn't. Because people who are there for the cruelty rarely want to narrate it once the consequences arrive. I told him I was glad Dad was recovering. I told him I wished Mom well. And then I said something I had been rehearsing in my own mind for over a year without knowing I was doing it. I said, if they had never needed something, do you think we would be having this conversation right now? He said that wasn't fair. I said, I agreed. It wasn't. I hung up. That night I got dinner at a restaurant I loved, sat at a corner table alone, ordered a glass of wine I had been saving the occasion for, and felt something clarify inside me. Not anger, not satisfaction. Just clarity. The kind that only comes when you stop waiting for other people to acknowledge the version of you that already exists. The calls from my mother picked up after that, one every few days at first, then more frequent. She left voicemails that evolved in tone the longer I didn't answer. The first ones were soft, just checking in. The middle ones had a slight tremor of urgency. Your brother says you're in Nashville. I'd love to see the place. The later ones dropped the performance entirely. Vivian, your father's follow-up appointments are expensive and we weren't prepared for it. We just need a little help getting through the next few months. I know things were said. I know you're upset. But we are your family. I listened to every single one. I saved them. I did not respond. What I was doing instead was preparing for the largest press moment of my company's existence. A major national beauty magazine had reached out 8 weeks earlier to profile me as part of their annual feature on self-funded women founders in the consumer space. I had spent months preparing for interviews, a photo shoot at my Nashville apartment, a sit-down conversation with their senior editor about the origin of the brand, the early years of building in a spare bedroom, the decision to leave behind a situation that wasn't serving my growth. I didn't name anyone. I didn't need to. The issue dropped on a Thursday in February. The headline across the top of the page read, "She built a $30 million brand in her spare bedroom. No investors, no connections, no apologies." The photo was simple. Me, standing at my kitchen island, no makeup except the products I made, holding a coffee mug, looking directly into the camera. Not performing confidence, just having it. By Friday afternoon, the article had been shared 40,000 times. My brand's website crashed twice from traffic. My inbox filled with partnership requests, interview invites, wholesale inquiries, and messages from women across the country who said some version of the same thing. I needed to read this today. I found out my mother saw it because Marcus called me that same Friday evening. He didn't lead with congratulations. He said, "Mom is devastated. She's saying the article makes the family look bad. She thinks you're doing this publicly on purpose." I said, "Marcus, I built a $30 million brand. The magazine called me. I didn't call them." He said, "You could have given us a heads up. Prepared us." I asked him what exactly he would have needed to prepare for. The part where I succeeded, or the part where I did it without their support. He hung up. The following Monday, a handwritten card arrived at my Nashville apartment. My mother had gotten the address from somewhere my cousin, I assumed, who had visited twice and apparently had not considered that information private. The card was from a set I recognized from their house, pale blue with a small floral border. Inside, in my mother's handwriting, "Vivian, we saw the article. We are proud of what you have built even if we didn't understand it at the time. Your father and I are going through a difficult stretch right now. The medical bills have been more than we expected, and we are behind on a few things. We are not asking for much, just enough to get level again. We miss you. We love you. Please come home." I sat with that card for a long time, not because I was tempted, but because I wanted to make sure I understood exactly what I was holding. There was no mention of what was said in that kitchen. No ownership of the word nobody, or the phrase silly little internet hobby, or the flat board suggestion that I leave. No acknowledgement that for 14 months they had not called to ask how I was, only called once it became useful to have me reachable. There was pride in the card, yes. But it was the kind of pride that arrives with a price tag already attached. I put the card in my desk drawer and I drafted a message. Not impulsive, not emotional. Clear. I typed it in the Notes app on my phone, read it 3 times, edited it twice, and then texted it to my mother's number. "I'm glad Dad is recovering. I genuinely hope things stabilize for you both. But I'm not in a position to provide financial support to people who told me I had no future and asked me to leave. What you're going through now is real, and I don't minimize it. But I also remember exactly what it felt like to leave that house with a duffel bag and nowhere to go. I wish you both well. Delivered." 2 blue check marks. Read. No reply came that night, or the next day, or the day after that. What came instead, 4 days later, was a call from my Aunt Denise, my mother's older sister, who had known me my whole life, who had held me at my baptism, who I genuinely loved in the uncomplicated way you love someone you only see at holidays, and who has never hurt you directly. She said, "Vivian, honey, I'm not getting in the middle of this. I just want to say that your mother is not a bad person. She's old-fashioned. She was scared for you. People say things when they're scared." I said, "I know she's not a bad person, Aunt Denise. I never said she was." She said, "She's your mother. You only get one." I said, "I know. And I love her, but loving someone doesn't obligate you to fund them after they've told you you're worthless. Even if that someone is your mother." There was a long pause. My aunt is a perceptive woman. She didn't push. She said, "Just think about it." I said I would. What I actually did that week was finalize the deal I had been negotiating for 3 months, an acquisition offer from a larger consumer goods company that wanted to bring my brand under their portfolio. Not a full exit. A strategic acquisition with an earn-out structure that kept me as creative director for 3 years and valued the company at $42 million. I signed the paperwork on a Tuesday morning at a conference table in a building in Midtown Manhattan, with my attorney on my left and the company's CEO across from me. There were handshakes and photographs and a bottle of something cold and celebratory that someone had thought to bring. I flew back to Nashville that evening, picked up takeout, sat on my floor surrounded by boxes because I was in the middle of redecorating, and let myself feel the full weight of what had just happened. I had started this in a spare bedroom with borrowed equipment and a credit card with a $3,000 limit. I had been told I was nobody. I had been handed a duffel bag and a door. And I had built $42 million from the rubble of that. I called my operations director. I called the friend who had believed in me since the very beginning, a woman named Dana who had lent me $800 to cover my first inventory order when I had nothing and who had never once asked for it back. I called my therapist. I did not call my mother. The news traveled without my help. A business wire picked up the acquisition announcement 2 days later. It was a short item. Just the facts: brand name, acquisition price, terms. A brief quote from me about the company's growth trajectory. My brother Marcus texted me within an hour of it going live. The text said, "Congratulations." Then nothing else. I said, "Thank you." Then nothing else. My mother called that evening. I let it ring. She left a voicemail that was different from all the ones before it. Her voice cracked twice. She said, "I know I don't deserve to say this, and I know I don't have the right to be proud of something I had no part in. But I am. I'm so proud of you, Vivian. And I am so sorry for what I said. For all of it. If you never forgive me, I understand. But I needed to say it." I listened to that voicemail 4 times. And then I made myself a cup of tea and sat by my window watching the Nashville skyline go amber in the evening light, and I asked myself what I actually wanted. Not what I was supposed to want. Not what would make for the tidiest ending or the most forgiving headline. What did I, Vivian, actually want? The answer that came back was quiet and certain. I wanted peace. I had spent 31 years chasing the approval of people who gave it conditionally, and I had finally built a life so full and so mine that I no longer needed it. What I wanted was not revenge. What I wanted was not reconciliation. What I wanted was exactly what I already had: clarity, distance, and the unshakable knowledge that I had done this without them. I wrote my mother a letter. I wrote it by hand, which surprised me, but it felt right. Something about the permanence of ink. I said, "Mom, I heard your voicemail. I believe that you mean it. And I want you to know that I am not angry. I let go of the anger a long time ago because I needed the space it was taking up. But I need you to understand something. The version of me who would have moved back home after that phone call, who would have written a check to make the discomfort go away, who would have shown up at Thanksgiving and pretended none of it happened because keeping peace mattered more than keeping my dignity, that version is gone. She left the morning I drove out of Columbus with $2,000 and no map. I have forgiven you. I truly have. But forgiveness is mine to give. And it doesn't come with a set of keys. You will not be invited into this chapter because you told me, in your own words, that I had no future. I built the future anyway. I hope you get to watch it from wherever you are. Take care of yourself and take care of Dad. With love, Vivian." I sealed the envelope. I dropped it in the mail on my way to a meeting. I did not wait for a response. What I did instead was move forward with the life I had already been building, the one that had not paused once for anyone's approval. I hired 2 more people. I launched a mentorship program for first-generation female founders, something I had been wanting to do for 2 years, a 12-week program fully funded by a portion of the acquisition proceeds. Designed for women who were building from nothing with no safety net and no one in their corner, we got 300 applications in the first week. My assistant brought a stack of them to my desk, and I spent a Saturday afternoon reading through them. One application was from a 24-year-old in Cleveland who had been told by her parents that her idea was a waste of time. Another was from a 30-year-old in Memphis who was building from a closet-sized apartment, working nights at a restaurant to fund her inventory. Another was from a woman my exact age who had left a situation that was making her feel small and had never looked back. I selected 12 of them personally. It has been 8 months since I mailed that letter. My mother has not responded to it. There have been no more voicemails, no more cards with pale blue borders. Marcus sent a brief message in December, saying "Happy Holidays," and I sent one back. That was the full extent of it. The silence does not ache the way I expected it to. There was a version of me that had anticipated grief, the kind that comes with closing a door that was always supposed to stay open. But grief requires loss. And I had already been losing this for years, quietly, in increments, every time I was told I wasn't enough. What I feel now is closer to the feeling of setting down something heavy you'd forgotten you were carrying. I wake up in Nashville in a home I own. The mortgage is in my name. The art on the walls is from artists I chose. The candles on the counter are from a supplier I built a relationship with before I had any leverage to offer. The person I am in this space, unhurried, unauditioned, entirely myself, is the person I had to fight to become. People ask me sometimes whether I regret not reaching out sooner. Whether I think about what could have been different if I had answered one of those calls, if I had shown up at the hospital, if I had sent a check and smoothed it over the way I used to. Here's what I tell them. Reaching out to someone who hurt you is not the same as healing. Keeping family together is not the same as keeping yourself whole. And the door that was slammed in your face does not automatically reopen just because someone realizes you are worth something after all. I don't need to be discovered. I have already found myself. And if my mother ever drives through Nashville, if she ever happens to pass the building where I live, if she squints up at the floor with the lights on and the skyline visible through the glass, I hope she sees exactly what she told me I'd never have. Not because I want to wound her, but because the truth, even when it's quiet, has a way of speaking louder than anything that was ever said in a kitchen in Columbus on a cold November morning. She told me I was nobody. I just needed enough distance to show her what nobody could build.